like we normally do, but just on Zoom. When we have it on Zoom, we can see all your beautiful faces. And we have been getting really into this new idea of Shabbat Dialogues, particularly for our services that are live streamed. And so if you haven't yet had an opportunity to see him on Instagram or whatever, I'd like to introduce you to my brother, Ryan Weiss. Ryan, say hi.
Okay, am I here?
You are there.
Okay, hello everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for having me.
We are so glad to welcome you, Ryan, from Venice, California. We are going to do a little bit of singing, a little bit of prayers, and then we're going to move into a little bit later our Shabbat dialogue. But for now, Tiffany, you can move us back to sort of the regular view. And I'm glad to welcome, as I said, welcome Ryan. I'm also glad to welcome my dad, Mark Weiss. I'm assuming my mom may be around as well, but I don't know. I'm glad to welcome Ryan's husband. Wait, he was, oh yeah, OP. That's Ori Prince. Ori, show yourself for a moment. Just say hi. Or not. Okay, we'll wait for that later. But we're going to open with a little bit of Hine Matov. So, as I was explaining, as I was reminding my brother Ryan, everybody has to be muted except for me, which isn't maybe necessarily the best way to do things, but it's the way we got it. So, Hine Matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. הנה מה טוב ומנעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים. אוי 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 שבת אחים גם יחד. שבת אחים אוי אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים. אוי 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 שבת אחים גם יחד. שבת אחים אוי אחים גם יחד. אוי 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 שבת אחים גם יחד. שבת אחים אוי אחים גם יחד. I think my papers were on the microphone. I'm very sorry. Okay. This is a poem that is it sounding better now? Okay, good. This is a poem that I've read to you before, but just has a powerful quality in it, and especially right now, especially this week in Houston, and probably throughout the world, could be understood in a reminder of the simple pleasures of life. It's called Recipe for a Life. Recipe for a Life. 1 cup gratitude. 2 tablespoons humility. 1/2 teaspoon of pride. 5 cloves of love, 2 crushed. 4 seeds of forgiveness. 2 tall stalks of strength. 1 tablespoon of surrender. 2 sprigs of awe, 3 shoots of wonder, a half a cup, hard knocks, melted. 1 cup, fresh squeezed joy, half cup, pounded sorrow. 1 cup, wisdom, sifted. 1 gleaming ray of light. 2 cubes, compassion. A dash of fleeting time. Pinch of coarse suffering. And the zest of music. Step 1, combine ingredients. Step 2, stir with abandon. Step 3, invite friends. Step 4, sing. Step 5, pray. The line between comfort and discomfort, the line between civilization and riot, the line between power and disempowered, that line of feeling comfortable, that line of living in the city like I do, and hearing on a regular basis traffic, the fire department, people yelling, and thinking that that's loud. And then my neighbor behind me loses power, and he has a gas generator running. And it is so blessed loud. And it runs for 10 hours straight. And then finally, thank God, it runs out of power and runs out of gas. And the quiet that comes is such a machaya, because I never realized how quiet my life really is. You forget how easy our lives are when the current is running, when all of our needs, our basic needs of feeling comfortable, of having cold water, of having water, period, of being able to make our cup of coffee, of being able to rely on the fact that our food will stay fresh, and not having to run out and buy bags and bags of ice. Just sleeping for 5 or 6 or 7 hours at a time. What a machaya it is when we can't. It has been a week for all of us Houstonians. And I know some of you are sitting in comfort in a returned power. Others are not. And others are sitting on the cusp of not having power all the time, of having a generator, as Tiffany pointed out, that requires tremendous care, like it's a baby, to make sure that it doesn't go offline. I believe it was Beshert that our service happened to have been planned tonight to be on Zoom only. And I'm sorry for those who can't join us tonight, because they literally can't. I invited my brother Ryan to join us for the Shabbat Dialogues, but I also asked him to participate a little bit. And so with that as an introduction, I invite you, Ryan, to lead us in a brief meditation to help us really enter Shabbat.
Beautiful. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you again for having me. And if you feel comfortable and safe to do so wherever you are, feel free to close your eyes. If that's not something comfortable for you, there's you're not getting a failing grade. So whatever feels good for you. I don't know that there's anything more Sabbath than the action of sitting and closing our eyes and taking a deep breath. This powerful trilogy, sitting our body down, closing down our eyes, our sight, and inhaling deeply, and then exhaling, is a powerful, powerful combination of activities. As we sit, we're letting ourselves acknowledge that we are supported. Because if we didn't believe that whatever it is that we are sitting on, the chair, the sofa, the floor, the foundation of the home that's holding up the floor, that's holding up the chair, if we didn't believe that it would support us, we wouldn't sit. So as we sit, it's like we surrender the activity of our lives and even the activity of our thoughts. We close our eyes as a way to remind ourselves that all the while, that we are living our lives and handling our responsibilities and taking care of each other and concerned about our whatever is going on in our lives, all the while there's this external world, there is also always our internal world, the self with a capital S. And as we close our eyes, we remove our focus from the world and we bring our focus back home to ourself, to acknowledge the presence of life, the miracle of being alive, here, now, always, here, now, always. And lastly, we breathe. We feed ourselves. And to say that we feed ourselves, it's probably not so accurate. Because I didn't decide to build my lungs, nor did I decide to create oxygen, nor did I decide to figure out the process that two oxygen particles combine with one another, bind to one another. Nor did I figure out the process of releasing carbon dioxide as I exhale. All of this was created for us. And all we need to do, which, by the way, we don't even need to do because it happens naturally. You don't need to think to breathe. You have an autonomic nervous system. You have a whole system of parts, miraculous parts that make up this vehicle that move you through the earth, that move you through your life. And that system knows simply to make room in the lungs, to expand the lungs, and oxygen rushes in without even needing to ask for it. a gift, a miracle. God feeding us. And so sometimes during the week, there are moments when we absolutely face real life struggles, real challenges. And there are also times when we're experiencing things that our mind turns into something maybe more than it is. And in that moment, we forget that we are breathing, that we are supported, and that we are here. Even in the midst of challenge, I am here, the witness, witnessing, aware, alive, aware of this experience that I'm having, aware of my thoughts about the experience that I'm having. And the gift of the Sabbath is that I remember to come back home to the me who is always here, who has never abandoned me. To come back to remember the divinity that is my very existence, the gift that is my life, that is this body, that is the abundance that comes into my life in any way or form. The abundance that comes when a friend calls to check in on me. The abundance that comes when someone mentions an idea that I was that helps me figure something out. The abundance that comes in the generosity of a loved one. And this Sabbath, we come home to ourself, our soul, the one thing that never changes. Here, always here, always now. And so taking a moment of gratitude for this moment, gratitude for this community that chooses to come together to remember and acknowledge the blessings. And let's take a deep, deep breath and let it go. One more time all together. Deep breath in. Okay. Slowly just allowing your eyes to open, coming back into the space or back into your space. Go ahead, Rabbi.
Yalai, lai, lai. La lai, 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 lai, lai. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Ya la 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 Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed Le'olam va'ed La 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 la. What you missed that day you were absent from fourth grade by Brad Aaron Modlin. Mrs. Nelson explained how to stand still and listen to the wind, how to find meaning in pumping gas, how peeling potatoes can be a form of prayer. She took questions on how not to feel lost in the dark. After lunch, she distributed worksheets that covered ways to remember your grandfather's voice. Then the class discussed falling asleep. Without feeling, you had forgotten to do something else, something important. And how to believe the house you wake up in is your home. Now, this prompted Mrs. Nelson to draw a chalkboard diagram detailing how to chant the Psalms during cigarette breaks, and how not to squirm for sound when your own thoughts are all you hear. Also, that you have enough. The English lesson was that I am is a complete sentence. And just before the afternoon bell, she made the math equation look easy. The one that proves that hundreds of questions and feeling cold and all those nights spent looking for whatever it was you lost and one person add up to something. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. As you're familiar, hopefully, with our Shabbat Dialogues format, we do shortened version of the prayers to allow for our Shabbat Dialogues. So we're going to channel our energies into Adonai Sefatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid Latecha. Those are the opening words to Tefillah, the words with which we say, we ask God for the ability, for the gift to open our mouths, to open our lips. We sort of enter into prayer, into meditation, into this focus on Shabbat with this amazingly humble statement, which is, even in our effort to offer thanks to you, God, we need your help because it's a bit impossible for us to fully understand the gift of life. Ananananana Adonai. Ananananana Sfatai Tiftach. Ananananana Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Tehila Techa. Ananananana Adonai. Ananananana Sfatai Tiftach. Ananananana Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Tehila Techa. We're going to take a minute now for focused thoughts, just calling to mind, maybe drawing up a list in our mind's eye of the people and things, the gifts of life that are so easy to take for granted. But not this week. This week we're reminded with a kick in the tush just how fortunate we are for the gift of plugging in two metal prongs into a wall, and energy flows out when things are going right. So let's take a minute of quiet contemplation. We all know that we didn't need this week to remind us that there is healing and hurt in the world, that there's hurt in need of healing in the world. We've been praying for years as we gather together online or in person. We continually remind ourselves of those in need of healing and wholeness. And every week it seems, every year it seems, we are given yet additional invitations to contemplate to become aware, to become more sensitive to those in need of healing. As we move into Misha Berach, I invite you to write into our chat the names of people you are thinking of who are in need of healing, of any kind of healing. Physical, spiritual, emotional, electrical, plumbing. And I encourage us all to open the chat. Don't just watch the names as they come up, but open the chat and scroll through. And look at those names and read those names. For each one is a world unto itself. Mi sheberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak V'Yakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu yivarech v'yirapeh et hacholim Elna refanala Elna refanala Elna refanala Elna refanala Mi sheberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak V'Yakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu yivarech v'yirapeh et hacholim Elna refanala Elna refanala Elna refanala Elna refanala. We started our Shabbat Dialogues a few months ago as an opportunity to bring to the Shabbat service, the Shabbat experience, something that was a bit more, maybe, I don't know, cognitive or cerebral, meant to invite in some experts, people who dwell in certain areas. And so, as I said, I'm super excited to welcome my brother, Ryan Weiss. Ryan is my brother who's 15 years younger than me. Some of you, many of you have met Cantor Sarah, and some of you have met Cantor Lizzie. Ryan is the third of the triplets of the children whom my parents brought into the world when I was 15. And they, in and of themselves, have brought so much to the world that give joy, that gives joy and love and teaching and wisdom. And I can't help but bring my family into my spiel, my experience, my role as a rabbi. So I invited Ryan. Ryan is a life coach and many other things. And you're going to get to hear of his wisdom, from his wisdom tonight. Ryan and I decided that we would focus our energy in our Shabbat dialogue on the subject of courage. It is an ingredient in the world that I think is too often lacking, especially in our leaders, too often. But yet it's something that I think all of us have expressed, all of us have experienced, all of us have witnessed. I want to read to you a definition of courage that I particularly like. So courage in Hebrew is sometimes translated as ometz lev, which essentially translates as strength of heart. And here, this is the definition. So the idea is with ometz lev, with courage, it is an attribute that we recognize, that we want to strive for, this strength of heart, and yet it in of itself needs a balance. And so this definition, which understands ometz lev in the context of the Musar tradition, Jewish ethics tradition, says this: for ometz lev, the key is such balance. It lies in the term itself. Ometz lev is the quality of strength, power, and willingness to speak truth to power and to defy community expectations. But it is also a quality of the heart, a strength tempered by love, gentleness, and desire for the well-being of all. Courage is something that really runs through all of us, and into which we are invited on a regular basis. And yet, it's something we find that can be difficult, can be challenging to step up and to step in to that ometz lev. And I was thinking a lot about it in the context of this week. One of the beautiful things that comes out of crises is the willingness of those who have resources to share the resources. Resources like air conditioning, resources like water, resources like electricity. Because in these moments when a hurricane blows through, literally fences come down. This isn't just allegorical. This isn't euphemistic. Literally, fences came down between properties that requires us, that encourages us at least, to connect with our neighbors in ways that we wouldn't have, to find ourselves on the street cleaning up with neighbors who we might have waved to bring people into our homes. It's so silly. This is the last thing I want to say before I invite Ryan to speak. Staying with us, one of the people staying with us this week is the daughter of my freshman year college roommate. I haven't spoken to my freshman year, I haven't seen my freshman year college roommate literally since college, but we've been connected through Facebook. And as a result, it turned out coincidentally, she's in Houston this summer. And he reached out and said, she doesn't have any electricity, she doesn't have any air conditioning, she doesn't even have any water. And, he had me at electricity. I said, bring her over. I love the fact that we have now had this capacity, this ability to connect, only because of this crisis. But yet, it's a matter of courage. This isn't to talk myself up, but it's to say, acting on the willingness to welcome people into your home, in and of itself, is an act of courage. Because it's so much easier not to. So, Ryan, you had a lot of thoughts on courage. And I may have taken this in the direction that you wanted to, or in a different direction, but the spoon is yours.
I have the talking stick.
Yeah, talking
Is
stick.
my connection okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, that was beautiful. I think along that theme, I get a sense that have we have an opportunity to make more mature our relationship with courage. That somehow courage has come to mean some version of like, I know what I'm doing, and I know who I am, and I know that I'm good, and I have a level of authority, and so I can, take whatever the action I need to take. Um, but I actually think that courage, rather than it being an emotion, courage is actually our ability to develop a relationship with the uncomfortable. It's the ability to develop a relationship with fear, with grief, with sorrow, with jealousy, with resentment. Courage is the willingness to be present when those things are here. When we experience dysregulation because of something going on in our life, in our relationships with money, with our health, in the world, we tend to jump so quickly up into our thoughts and think about, what am I going to do about this? How do I fix this? What does this mean? Why is this happening? When I think in reality, we have an opportunity instead, apologize for the dog barking at the squirrels. Instead of jumping up into our heads and thinking about the situation, what if these difficult situations are actually coming as an opportunity for us to practice going into our bodies and feeling the grief or feeling the fear or feeling the resentment or feeling the resentment? Did I just say that? The jealousy, feeling whatever is here. Because if I can allow myself to be fully present to the sensations in my body, the emotions, the physical sensations in my body that are really uncomfortable. Firstly, if I can even let myself become aware that they're here. Many of us are living up here. Many of us often have no idea how we're really feeling. We may think we know how we're feeling, but we don't really connect. And I don't, another time you can come to a workshop or something and I can talk to you about how humans evolved and how our emotions evolved and how they're a very necessary thing, which are just our body's way of communicating to us that we have a need that's not being met. When we're experiencing something uncomfortable, when we're experiencing that, what we call negative emotions, it's just our body's way of trying to say, hey, I'm perceiving that I have a need for safety, for connection, for validation. I have a need that's not being met right now. But when we were very, very, very young, we had to prioritize attachment in order to survive over the authenticity of our experience. Meaning, when we were very young, pre-verbal, we learned that there were ways that we needed to sequester or abandon our uncomfortable experiences as a way to keep our primary caretakers close so that we could survive. Courage is rewriting that story. Courage is reparenting ourselves so that we can train ourselves to recognize and know that when discomfort arises, it is not a problem. It does not threaten attachment. It is actually an opportunity for me to discover more about myself, for me to communicate vulnerably, authentically with others. And when I do so, develop more intimacy in my life. Courage is the willingness to be seen even when we're not perfect. It's the willingness to engage in life even when we don't know what we're doing. It's the willingness to take action even when we're afraid. And because we're here on Shabbat, perhaps that also has something to do with remembering who you are, remembering what walks with you, who walks with you, remembering the miracle it is every morning when you wake up and you open your eyes. The miracle it is that it sounds like most of us now can just go like this to a little metal thing on our countertop and water comes out. It's a miracle. The miracle, as we said in the opening meditation, that this physical body knows how to breathe. This miracle that grows a human inside of a woman's body under layers of skin, as if to say to the human, hey, I don't need your help with this. Hands off, I got this. And so, what if we can remember as we face our challenges, who stands with us in that challenge?
Ryan, thank you. I have a question I'd like you to address. Prior to this week, we had plenty to worry about in the world. Whether it was in the Jewish community worrying about anti Semitism, Israel, the rise of Marine Le Pen in France, um, or any number of signs of worldwide Jew hatred. None of us needed, most of us didn't need to watch the debate to be concerned about the age of both of our presidential candidates. And of course, it fills the airwaves so much. What I would like to ask you to share is, in your view, what would be a courageous view, a courageous approach to life in the next, let's say, 6 months, while we are inundated with journalists and pundits and videos and threats and scare tactics and from right to the left? What does bringing courage to our life look like in the face of so many perceived or real threats?
I don't know. I don't know. All I know is how I try to wake up every day and pay attention to everything that's going on in the world and right size
Mhm.
the temptations to be sucked in by extremist polarization. And I have to stay in connection with myself.
Mhm.
And I have to find my own foundation every day because the winds, whether they're coming from the left or they're coming from the right, are strong. Whether they're coming from anti-Semitism or wherever the winds are coming from, they're strong. And so I think for myself, finding my ground, and if I notice that I'm scrolling too much, asking myself, what's my intention right now? If I find myself turning on CNN, even asking myself, is this the best use of my time right now? Asking myself, is this the best source for my education? Or are there other places that I might be able to find to keep my hygiene clean? Not, this is not about not looking at the suffering in the world. It's about looking at the suffering in the world with sober eyes and noticing when we get drunk on fear, noticing when we get drunk on polarization, and then coming back home and asking ourselves, who am I in this? How do I, in every area of my life, contribute what is authentic from my soul? And that means when I become aware, me personally, I'm speaking to myself, when I become aware that I am judging someone, no matter how legitimate my judgment is, I ask myself, where do I contribute the kinds of energies that I judge? Or when I get taken by what I see happening in our political world, and I notice that my head starts telling me a story that they are the problem, I ask myself, where do I not maybe have understanding about where they're coming from? Or I ask, that's courageous. It is far easier to look at the people that we disagree with and to tell a story it's because they're a bad person and contribute to that. Go to lunch with our friends and talk about it,
Right.
as opposed to having the courage to think for ourselves and to be curious about what people's experiences. I don't know if you've all heard of Burning Man, but I'm a a qualified burner, I guess. I think this year will be my ninth year going. And one of the reasons that I love it is because at Burning Man, there are 10 principles. And a few of the 10 principles are radical self-expression, but also radical self-reliance, but also radical inclusivity. And that principle of radical inclusivity, one of the applications of it is when someone is doing something that you disagree with or you don't like, there's a temptation to exclude them from your life, to paint them, as opposed to the principle of radical inclusion is, tell me about why you're doing that. I'm curious. I'm curious to hear from you. And so I think it's courageous to listen to people we don't agree with. It's courageous to pause our tongue from telling them how they're wrong and maybe considering that simply giving them the gift of listening is all that's needed. Perhaps some of the extremism that we experience in the world right now is happening as a result of people feeling incredibly alone and incredibly isolated and incredibly financially strapped. And we know that those people are like targets for extremism.
Yeah.
And so this temptation to do the easy thing, which is to judge and other, could instead courageously be met with compassion and to have the courage when you hear a friend to pause your friend and to say, I see it differently. When it comes to being Jewish, wherever your stance is, I would imagine that we all have a very similar stance. Speaking it, sharing it, getting really educated about the complexities of the world's issues, and having the courage to speak up. I'll say one more thing. There's a book called Man's Search for Meaning. I would imagine a lot of us have read it, by Viktor Frankl. And there's a very famous quote from that book that says, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. So what does that mean? The stimulus is a trigger, some situation that's come into our life, and it could be an exogenous one, meaning it's coming from the world, it's coming from outside of me. It could be one coming from inside of me, a thought, about I'm so stupid, or I shouldn't have done that, or whatever. These are the stimuli that he talks about. So in between the stimulus and the response, meaning how I react, the first thing that comes out of my mouth,
Mm-hmm.
the falling away or the fighting back, in between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space lives my freedom. That is courageous. To find that space between when something comes that's hard, to learn to pause, to feel, to pay attention to what happens inside of me. Because the more I do that, the more I find the presence of myself, my soul, my beingness. And every time I do that, it's like you're powering up your battery to give more love and light to the world.
I really appreciate that. That notion of that space, I might suggest, is where courage lies. That so often we think of courage as the action, the firefighter who goes into the building, that's the courageous act. But the courageous act for that firefighter is when he chose to become a firefighter, when he trained to become a firefighter, when he studied and came to understand how fire works, to know that there's a possibility, that there's a great possibility that he will, or she will, or they will fix the problem, but also know that long before they went into that building, that there was a possibility of putting themselves in danger, but for the sake of some greater principle. And so it's that I think it's possible, and it happens, that people respond courageously.
Well, can I
Without,
can I jump into that really quick, Scotty?
yeah,
Or Rabbi Scott?
that's fine.
I think what you're saying is that the courage is the moment that firefighter is looking at this building that's ablaze. And there's a moment when fear courses through that firefighter's body. And that firefighter is willing to feel that fear
Mhm.
and still take action, as opposed to the majority of us, I'd imagine, civilians, who would see the building on fire, experience an incredible amount of fear, and choose to avoid the fear by not running in. I'm not saying we should all be running in. We're using this as an analogy.
Of course.
But this is the point, is
Try this at home.
courage dies the moment we allow our fear to stop us. That's how we give our uncomfortable emotions power. Now, then, I'll say one other thing, which is, so what do we do instead? We've typically learned to ignore our fear by scrolling on Instagram or by eating something or by jumping up into our thoughts and thinking, which actually gives fear, gives uncomfortable emotions all the power, because it doesn't go away. It's just right here sitting underneath the surface of our consciousness. It's right here still. But the moment that we say, this fear gets to be here, the moment we say this jealousy gets to be here, it's okay, I can be with this, that's courage to me.
And this is what many of us have sung many times. The words of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, who wrote the words Kol Haolam Kulo, Gesher Tsar Ma'od. All the world is a narrow bridge. In all our lives, there are always narrow bridges before us. Narrow bridges that don't necessarily feel safe or look safe. But then he adds, Ha'ikar lo lefached klal. The direct translation is, the principle, the major lesson is, do not be afraid. But he's not legislating emotion. What he's saying is, do not be your fear. Do not allow the fear to interrupt your walking across that bridge. Meaning, feel the fear. Take it with you. Recognize it. And keep walking. To me, Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav is a real hero because he died at far too early an age. He was a 17th century Hasidic Rebbe. But Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, by all modern evaluations, suffered from deep clinical depression. And he knew it. And yet he wrote about how he would move forward, move continually with the fear. And he wouldn't allow the fear to interrupt his life. There's so much seemingly to be afraid of these days. And I am so grateful to all of you for joining us for this Shabbat Dialogues. I want to take a moment to offer the words of Kol Haolam Kulo. And then we will invite names for Kaddish and bring our service to a conclusion. Kol Haolam Kulo Gesher Tsar Meod Gesher Tsar Meod Gesher Tsar Meod Kol Haolam Kulo Gesher Tsar Meod Gesher Tsar Meod והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל, והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל. So many people came before us who gave us life, who gave us support, who gave us joy and memories. I invite you now to write in those names as we prepare to offer Kaddish. And I encourage us all to read those names, allowing ourselves to allow their names to resonate for us. A gift. Just bringing up the words for y'all so that we can all be on this, literally on the same page. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah ve'alma divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ulmei ulmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmed kudsha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'elma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'ramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who makes peace in the high places make peace upon us, upon all Israel and all the world. And let us say, Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim ve'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. L'chaim. And now I ask everybody to unmute yourselves. This is one of my favorite parts of our COVID Shabbats. Everybody unmute.
What?
We have grape juice.
For our cacophonous
Look at that.
mozart.
No, it's in the refrigerator here.
Everybody ready?
Wow.
Baruch
Baruch
atah
Eloheinu melech haolam, המוציא לחם האורץ. Amen.
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 Thank you.
Everybody, everybody next week.
Shalom, everybody.
For some reason, Michigan's not up here, but Axel is.
Bulldogs.
And literally,
Of course,
he
love
woke up
Mama.
just as I took the challah cover off the challah.